Welcome back to India Decides at 9. Number portability was finally kicked off today by Kapil Sibal and the Prime Minister as they made a small call to each other. Essentially, what this means is that you can shift your service provider, your cell phone provider, but still keep your old phone number. How is this going to impact everyone? Are a lot of people going to be moving or not? Joining us for a little more on that is the Minister of State for Communication, Information Technology, Sachin Pilot's there with us. And we also do have with us Sanjay Kapoor, who's the CEO of Bharti Airtel, India and South Asia. Sanjay, thanks a lot for joining us. Sachin, if I can just start with you. Number portability, why do you think this is something particularly important? Is this because there's some sort of a monopoly factor, which, once you have a number, you can't change your service provider unless you change your number? Is this a crucial step?
Well, mobile number portability has finally been launched today, and it's been a national rollout. And to my mind, it's a significant step in the telecom sector, in the telecom industry. Now, India's 750 million mobile users have the freedom of choice, which earlier they didn't have. You were stuck with a mobile service provider, even if you weren't happy with the services. And this is going to lead to increased competition amongst the operators to give the best quality of services. So your call drops, your congestion, your network problems, your billing issues, if you weren't happy, earlier you were stuck. So today, the consumer is king, and it's a power to the people.
Right. Have you done any analysis at all or any thoughts of who could benefit or lose from this? There is a feeling that some of the older players may end up losing out to the newer players just because the older players have a larger installed base of users, if you like, who have numbers, and they might lose some of these to some of the newer players who've come in.
I think that debate is not important as far as I'm concerned. I'm looking at how the consumers are going to have the freedom and the option to choose the service provider they want and still having the same number that they've been used to. So some will gain, some will lose. There'll be a churning process. And the objective of the exercise is really to give the cheapest and the best quality of mobile services to our people. And we have the second largest mobile market on the planet with 15 to 18 million new mobile subscribers every month. So it's been the collective endeavor of the industry and of the government to make sure that we are giving the best possible services. So let the people decide. I think time will tell as to who's gained and who's lost out in the industry. But one thing is for sure, that the Indian mobile users are going to end up being the biggest gainers.
All right, Sachin Pilot, thanks a lot for joining us, and we will now dive into the question of who could win and who could lose. As I said, we have with us Sanjay Kapoor, CEO of Bharti Airtel, India and South Asia. Sanjay, would an older, more established player like yours feel more threatened by this, or because at the end of the day you have more subscribers, so you stand to lose some of them, or do you think it's an opportunity? Which way do you see it?
Well, Vikram, I think what Mr. Pilot just said is absolutely bang on. Ultimately, the customer will win. And let me say that anything that's good for the customer has always been good for Bharti Airtel. So I begin from there. I will just use a few data points and cases that I can put forward. If you go by the initial experience from November till now in Haryana, then clearly that verdict is in favor of the bigger brands. And Bharti Airtel, which necessarily is not the market leader in Haryana, has a positive net gain from the MNP activity. When you look at the surveys that have been done by independent agencies in this country, whether ET, what they reported a couple of weeks back, or what HT reported with Mars this morning, that also very clearly suggests that big operators tend to win, and there's a big mandate in favor of players like Airtel and some other big ones.
Sanjay, Sanjay, I'm not going to really get in. I think it's also, we can't get into a comparison of one and the other. Some of the other people aren't around on this debate. But I just wanted to ask you, the fact that many people want to change their service providers, does that also send a message somewhere that people are unhappy with the quality of cell phone services that they're getting? There have been a large number of call drops. It's starting to get much worse than it was earlier. Maybe it's because spectrum is drying up or whatever the reasons are. But do you think there's a certain decrease in the satisfaction people have with cell phone services? And I'm not speaking across the board, not just Bharti or anyone else.
Yeah, so Vikram, I'm not going to be defensive on this one. Let me clearly say that I think everything needs to come into a context. When you really compare the Indian networks with even the developed part of the world, I would rate the Indian networks at least in the top quartile of networks that operate anywhere in the world. And this is despite the fact that Indian operators work with the least amount of spectrum available to a normal operator any part of the world. Given these constraints, given the fact that we are a very large country, 3,000 kilometers by 3,000 kilometers virtually, I think the operators overall over the last 13, 14 years have done a good job given these constraints. Are all the customers happy? Do they all experience blemishless calls? Answer is no. A bit has to do with technology. A bit has to be dealt with by the truths of this country. We believe that as more spectrum gets released, and I'm very hopeful that the ministers will do something very favorable on this for the consumer as we progress on Telecom Policy 2011.
All right, of course, policy towards release of spectrum is an entire different matter, which would take me 6 hours to really get into. So we'll leave it there. Sanjay, thank you so much on a day when number portability was finally announced. And let's see who wins and who actually loses in this entire process. Thank you so much for joining us on India Decides at 9. It's a pleasure.